Welcome to the 2020 Presidential Race Review. I'm your host, Jessica Kwong. Welcome to the 2020 Presidential Race Review. I'm Jessica Kwong, and I have two guests with me here today. New York City Council member Andy King, and also Republican speechwriter Lisa Schiffren. Let's get right to it. We have 7 candidates who are going for the Democratic nomination, and we're going to start with the Democrat, Andy King. So let's be straight. Who is the candidate that you're going for right now?
Well, I'm still assessing them. But one of the things I do want to look for in a candidate, and I tell every voter, when you're looking for a candidate, look for someone who has a record of doing some things, not just the nice conversation at the start of the day and start of the campaign. So many people get fooled by sound bites, but you really got to look into the heart of the individual who's running for office, their commitment to help people, and a track record that said they actually accomplished something. Right now, you want to find a candidate who has some executive skills. Because if you don't have any executive skills, how do you say you're an executive?
So do you mean like Bloomberg or Tom Steyer? They're billionaires who had a long track record.
Well, I say they do qualify because they have some executive skills. When you have a lot of elected officials, and one of the things I've always tell everybody, you can't be in a house for 15 or 20 years and then all of a sudden on the 21st year you want to complain about the house. If you're going to be in a house and if you're going to come out and say, I want to lead the house, then you should have done some things during your tenure in the house to improve the house that shows that you're qualified to lead the house.
Are there any senators right now that you're pleased with? And can you give us any hints on maybe their top 3 candidates that you're into right now?
I would say right now, Mayor Bloomberg, as much as some people might be disingenuous about how they believe and how he feels about him, how he served in New York as a mayor, under his tutelage, the city of New York did do well. It improved in some areas, and some things we might be annoyed with, and people will talk about those things, but that can't be his ever existence of being the mayor of the city of New York.
So he sounds like your top candidate right now.
Well, you have Mayor Bloomberg, and then you have to talk about the Vice President Biden, who actually served in the White House, has an idea of what Washington looks like, how to get some things done, and has done some things. So you can't discard him at all. And then, after that, how do you say his name? Bumashar?
Pete Buttigieg.
Buttigieg.
Mayor from South Bend.
I like his poise, as he always comes. A lot of times during the conversation, he tries to bring back reasons, try to bring the conversation back to focus.
He's very cool and collected.
Yeah, because sometimes they go off the map with some of the conversations if you have it. But yeah, those will probably be 3 that I'm looking at, at this point in time. But I ask everyone to still stay tuned because more needs to be heard.
Okay, great. So Lisa, you're a Republican or conservative, whichever way you want to say it, and you're also a Trump supporter from what I understand. Which candidate do you think could beat Trump if there's any that could pose a threat to him?
Honestly, I think Bloomberg is the most serious threat.
Okay.
Although, I'm a native New Yorker, I did not think he was a particularly good mayor. I thought Rudy Giuliani did a fabulous job turning the city around, and Bloomberg slid. He maintained, and he did a bunch of things I thought were actually despicable, like overturning the 2-term law because he wanted a 3rd term, for which there was no real need. I also don't like the fact that he, $60 billion strikes me as double oligarch level, being able to buy what you want.
And we see that happening right now.
We see it happening, except the one fabulous thing about Michael Bloomberg is that he is such a terrible speaker that when he gets out there, he undercuts himself.
Great.
No, he undercuts himself in this astonishing way.
I have to agree with
He actually ran a commercial during the debate showing him speaking well at some event that was undoubtedly staged for the commercial. And then the camera flips back to him on the debate stage.
Which makes him look worse, right?
And blushing and saying really stupid things that undercut his entire message. Like, yes, of course I'm a loyal Democrat. Why, 2 years ago, I bought 21 out of the 40 seats. I paid $100 million to make sure Nancy Pelosi could be Speaker of the House. That's an astonishing thing for somebody who's being criticized for using his money to say.
What do you have to say to that, since it seems like Bloomberg's your top 2 or 3?
Well, listen, at the end of the day, the President of the United States still has to work with the legislative body and the judicial body to make the world work. So the three houses always have to come together. So sometimes it doesn't. You just want somebody who's competent enough to go in there and be able to have diplomatic skills to move people to moving agendas. The thing is, knowing what that agenda looks like. Can Mayor Bloomberg do that? He's done it as a mayor of the city of New York, even though some people fight and struggle with that. And again, Biden has done the same thing when he worked as the vice president.
Well, Andy,
So-
it seems like your choices, Buttigieg, Biden, and remind me again.
Bloomberg.
And
Bloomberg,
Bloomberg.
right? They're all moderates, right? So is that where you want the candidate and the Democratic
Well,
nomination go to instead of a progressive?
I believe that there has to be a balance, because if you have someone that's so way on one end, you can't see the other side of the table. And I think we have to respect everyone's positioning. And one thing I've learned about when you're talking about progressive, Democrats, Republicans, conservatives, how do we come to a meeting of the minds? Because we all make up the United States of America. And one specific group shouldn't bully another set of group because of their idealism. And I ask everyone, when we do that, we mess up America. And then we have these fights inside. And who does not benefit from that? The people, the American people don't benefit when the people who got elected to go do a job can't do a job because they're stuck on idealism as opposed to how do we get things done.
Well, the reality is that Bernie Sanders is actually leading after the first three primaries, and the first three caucuses. So, what do you think about that, Lisa? I mean, you mentioned that Bloomberg you think is the biggest threat. So,
I think he's a threat because at the end of the day, he's smart and he's sane and he has a real record.
Is it about progressive or moderate at all?
No, of course, of course. I think Bernie is not a Democrat. He's a socialist. I remain puzzled as to why the Democratic Party allowed him to run on their platform. I think that was a mistake. I think the same thing is true about Bloomberg, except you see why they wanted him. I think Elizabeth Warren believes more or less exactly the same thing as Bernie. That little dig you had about people who complain about the House after 21 years doing nothing, that's Bernie. He was in the Senate for 20 years, did nothing, passed 3 bills, 2 of which were naming post office. And now he wants to remake the economy. So, okay. I think Amy Klobuchar, who is clearly not doing as well as you would hope, is also a very sensible, kind of rational, realistic person. I think she's a little left of where she wants us to think she is on the issues, but I think she's capable of negotiation. What I like about her is that when people start talking about free college for everyone or Medicare for all, her response is like the mom response. It's like, okay, but we can't pay for that, so no. That's a grown-up response.
Right.
It's not, well, we want it, so we'll find a way, which is the Warren
Bernie
Sanders approach. So, Buttigieg, 20 years from now, maybe. He's a baby.
He's only 38.
He's
yeah.
38.
Other candidates are 78.
He makes a lot of to do about his marriage, but you know what? I don't care if you're married. I care if you have raised children, because that is how you grow up and deal with reality and learn that not everybody's going to listen to you the first 5 times.
Right.
I think he's a baby and he's smart. Let him get some real experience.
I have to agree with you, because the senator from Minnesota, she definitely delivers logic at times, and it's not, for me, it's not so off to one side or right. It comes with reason. Warren and Bernie, they're on one road, and if you can't get on that road with them, hey, we're sorry. I listened to the debate last night, and I was tickled, appalled, and like, I couldn't believe my eyes at the time, because it looked like a few times like a bunch of kindergartens in there just talking over each other and just running their mouths, not respecting each other. I'm like, well, who was the statesperson in this conversation? No one was stately last night.
No one.
No one.
There was
I'm
a lot of screaming on top of each other.
Right. So if you're going to run for the president of the United States, you always have to maintain your poise, always have to lead people to a conversation that you can see them take them from the beginning to the end, so they can see your point of view. There was a lot of conversations that was happening that led me off a cliff. I was like, where are you going with your conversation?
Well, they never really got to the substance.
Yeah, they didn't.
It is a weakness of our system, and this was true in 2016 on the Republican side, that we don't have people who run these parties, and there's no winnowing process. So you get up on a stage, and there are 25 people or there are 2 rounds of 15 each. That's not a useful kind of debate. And certainly,
So you're hoping that gets whittled down pretty
oh,
soon?
of course, yes,
We're
because
10 months from the election.
all of these people have an image and there's a reality. And if you want to know the reality, you need to hear them and you need to read about them at length, and not the 2 minutes and then
Right.
talking over each
Right.
other. And literally, Gayle King said to, I forget which one of the candidates, oh, well, we give you a minute 15, that ought to be enough. Okay, but not if you
enough.
want to talk about substance.
Right.
Well,
exactly.
predictions. What are some predictions on who can get knocked off? Let's say we have 7 candidates right now. Which 3 do you think are going to remain if it gets down to that point? Any guesses?
Well, I think Buttigieg will be out after South Carolina because, as black leaders have pointed out very delicately, his sexual orientation will be off-putting to many voters. So, it was actually shocking and interesting that that wasn't the case in Iowa. I think he's young. I think he has plenty of time. I think,
He's got a lot of potential. Can't deny that.
but he needs a real job. Amy Klobuchar is right when she says, "Why don't you
Mayor's not
try?
good enough,
no,
right?
but why don't
Mayor's
you
Win some- yes,
win
exactly,
something?
yeah,
Win a statewide office." Tom Steyer just seems like
Yeah.
a big zero to me.
Yeah, I have to agree
but
with you on that
He's
too.
got a lot of money, and that's why he's still in
Yeah,
it.
but you know what? You need money and a little bit of.
He keeps pushing his climate agenda and what he's done for the climate. Do you think that is he's just talking about it, or we're not taking that into consideration that he's done a lot for the climate?
I would just like to say that ever since our Bronx Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez came up with the really
Green New
shocking Green New Deal based on kind of nothing, which is a pure economic program and has nothing to do with the environment, they all just latched onto it. They all just sort of swallowed it hook, line, and sinker, and they all kind of regurgitated at moments. Haven't seen that from Bloomberg. But Steyer just bought that wholesale, and everything he has to say comes out of that document, which is shameful. Let's do some research. Let's figure out what actually has to be done and what doesn't have to be done.
Well, we're going to take a short break, and then we'll be back with more 2020 presidential race. Welcome back to the 2020 Presidential Race Review. I'm here with my guests, New York City Council member Andy King and Republican speechwriter Lisa Schiffren. We're going to continue by talking about something that Pete Buttigieg said during the debate last night. He said that if the Democratic nomination goes to Bernie Sanders, then the party is going to lose and Trump is going to get elected again. What do you think about that, Andy?
I think that is an accurate statement. And I think people have failed to realize is that Bernie Sanders represents a small piece of America and an American agenda. There are many people over the ages of 45 and 50 years old who are still subscribing to yesterday's story, who are still, I know you're conservative, and I understand what conservatism means in this country, but that doesn't make it horrible. You know, people still want values, and when you talk about the progressive agenda, sometimes they just let the genie out of the bottle and everything goes, and you try to get it back in. So if you have
his argument is that he's already won three states, and there's more people that believe in progressive values than you think. You don't buy that?
I don't buy that because you walk down the streets in the Bronx or you go in the streets of Manhattan.
And,
there are a lot
we're
of people
liberal here in New York.
Yeah,
so.
but you'll have a lot of people that are going to be new voters who have no clue who are some of those people on that stage. So they're going to be looking at who's going to be able to feed them more information, whether it's going to inspire them to come out or not come out at all. So I would say you're going to have your dedicated voters who always vote. Bernie has a movement, but if him and Warren are in there together, they're going to break up that movement. So that's going to be the biggest problem right there. But at the end of the day, I don't believe Bernie Sanders can beat Donald Trump.
See, I think that you so nicely use the word progressive about his views. And there are progressive values that most of us would support. Certainly, they have made their way into the mainstream. He's not a progressive, he's a communist.
He calls himself a democratic socialist.
Yes, he does. And yet he supported the Soviet Union when it was the Soviet Union and not Russia. He is...
That was a long time ago, though, right?
But he did that his whole life.
Okay.
I think he is too... I don't even know whether you say to the left or to the right of Putin. But I think he really was a communist. And that is a piece of judgment that I think is unforgivable. And the fact that he continues to promulgate those views is shocking. Let me just say this. Of course he'll lose, and he'll lose big, because Americans, including lower income people, minority people, everybody except overprivileged college kids, rejects communism. We know it doesn't work. There are, hundreds of millions of deaths in the 20th century and no success stories. So if you want starvation, if you want to be Venezuela eating your zoo animals and your pets, that's great.
What does that say about where we are? I mean, Sanders is leading right now. So does that mean that the other candidates just aren't good and nobody likes?
Well, in a way, it does mean that. It means that the fact that he has a very clear message that he articulates as well as it can be done, and that he's got this kind of cranky old man persona that many people think is authentic and intelligent.
I don't know how appealing that is, though.
No,
but he's got the young vote.
I am a New York Jew, and I have uncles, and nobody wants to be at the table with him. This is not behavior that most of us find so attractive, but it seems to have some resonance. I think the issue is this. For the most part, unless there's a real disaster, and usually an economic disaster, and right now we're in the middle of a huge boom, a president gets reelected. And therefore, the party out of power is far more likely to run a second-tier candidate. Here's an example, Bob Dole. Great Republican, everybody loved him. He clearly wanted to be the nominee of the party against Bill Clinton in 1996. But you didn't see that he wanted to win. He wanted to be the nominee, and he was. And that was fine. John Kerry wasn't going to beat George Bush. John Kerry has a lot of baggage that was never going to get past
The election
most
is a
voters.
referendum of the president.
It is a referendum on the president. And so lots of people, somebody like Klobuchar, some of the younger people who ran, some of the senators who were already gone, people like Andrew Yang, they lost nothing. They got their names out. We all know who they are now. If they want to come back in 2024 when it's theirs to lose, that will be better. They will have a better shot.
This is Bernie's second time around. Do you think he's going to do better or worse?
Oh, he's clearly doing better because Hillary isn't there to steal his votes.
And that's the truth, because that's why he's at the state right now, because other than Biden, he's the only one that's ever ran for the executive office. So the other ones, his name is out there more nationally than the senator from Minnesota, or even Liz Warren, even though they know her up in Massachusetts. But Bernie got his name out from the last run.
Well, Biden's run 3 times, and do you think that Americans are pleased with him? It doesn't seem like it just from the first 3.
You know what? The most Biden has ever gotten in any primary is, he's never come out with more than 20% of the vote. Biden, I'm sure Barack Obama had his reasons for choosing Biden, and I would be a little cynical about what they were.
They were a great pair, it seems like.
I think Biden was a kind of comfortable old white guy that people who might be dubious about a young black president would just look at
Balances
Joe Biden.
out. Okay.
Right. So I think he was a token white guy on his ticket, and he got
Imagine
way
that.
further than he ever would have done without that.
He always does mention Obama whenever he's in
He
these
is
debates.
not a man with a
I don't
distinguished
know,
record
right,
of his
does
own.
he have his own identity? That's what I'm wondering. Do you think he has his own identity?
Well, only thing I can say, with no disrespect to the vice president, but the president endorsed somebody else. That sends a message.
That's a huge message.
And as much as he may be on the list of being able to do it. At this point, you made a valid point. I know we should put odds because I wouldn't say here, I would not go into the booth and vote for Donald Trump because of some of the policies that he's done. And one of the craziest things is when you decided it was okay to take $8 billion out of healthcare system that's going to hurt New Yorkers and seniors. And I have a problem with that. What are you thinking? And you're a native New Yorker. So I don't understand what's your logic. Where are you spending this money? What makes things just okay if it was your grandmother, your great-grandmother who needed the services, but it was okay? But when there's a lot of smoke and mirrors in politics. And when they had the Democrats and everybody was focused on the impeachment, this kind of thing gets dropped down. So I'm saying we got to look at somebody who's going to be on the ground smart, who has their eyes open and everything, and is going to be fair and talk to the people at the same time. And again, I'm not going back to Bloomberg because he's saying he's the guy, but as an executor, you have certain skills and talents that delivers. He's been an executor who has been successful. You can't negate that just because someone has a better political spin on the conversation. And again, yes, he's a horrible orator at times, but again, he's been a successful business person.
Well, Lisa, you said that Bloomberg is the biggest threat to Trump. So if they were actually facing each other, do you think that Bloomberg is going to succeed? If he's not good on the debate stage with other Democratic candidates, do you think he has a chance if they're going to be the two candidates?
I do not think he will succeed against Donald Trump for several reasons. Donald Trump has now had 4 years as president of the United States. That gives you a lot of polish and confidence that he might not have had in 2015. Mm-hmm. But also,
he's definitely confident now, especially after going through the Mueller thing.
But even apart from that, he has enacted a lot of policies that don't always get reported on, but our economy is booming. He hasn't started new wars. He's moving to retrench, whether that's always the best thing or not. Lots of deregulation. The economy is booming. People, immigration, to the extent that you don't want open borders, our borders are not really open anymore. And that's, getting control of that is a big thing for most Americans. I don't know. I think that Mike Bloomberg, I think that he's not a politician. Here's this man who actually built a business.
Well, Trump wasn't a politician.
Nah, Trump was always a little bit of a politician.
He was entertainment.
He was a people person. He courted the newspapers my whole life. Mm-hmm. I didn't think so highly of him when he was on the front page of the New York Post for 20 straight years. But I do think that he has done a surprisingly good job. And against terrible odds, because nobody's ever been opposed in this manner. Much of it, I think, not very straight. Bloomberg made $60 billion. That is enough affirmation for his genius. This is not his field. He's not good at it. He can't outline a policy that's coherent. He might be able to enact one if somebody else is feeding it to him or with his staff. That's all possible. He's not a politician, and you have
Andy,
to win the election.
What do you think?
I know Mayor Bloomberg is a horrible politician. Donald Trump has been able to smooth, move, cajole, manipulate, and just be downright arrogant and belligerent at times. And because of his arrogance, he's bullied people, he's scared people, and he's forced people to do certain things that he might not have wanted to do because he took the power of the president to work for him.
You know what?
But at the end of the day, you want to make sure that all Americans benefit from your policies. And he's not the one that's creating all these policies. Trust me, he has a staff that's out there doing the research, that's putting it all together. He's supposed to be the messenger.
You know what? That is
he's
a
supposed
really
to be
good
the messenger.
point. No, that's a great
and he's a
point.
bad messenger at times because sometimes he disrespects people, and it's not what you say, it's how you deliver it.
No, the point you just made, that he's got a staff and they're coming up with a lot of these policies. So to me, as an observer of both parties and to some extent, of course that's true. Mm-hmm. And of course that is why any Democrat that you were to elect, the same people will come in to run their foreign policy or their economic policy, whether you are Bernie Sanders, maybe not so much Bernie, but whether you're Elizabeth Warren or Mike Bloomberg. There are a credentialed set of people who the Democrats will call on, just as there are for the Republicans. So really the policies are going to be more similar than different with all the Democrats versus all the Republicans. So if there were another Republican who could do what Trump is doing, okay, maybe people would take that seriously. Your argument that he bullies and twists arms, that's what any party leader does. Getting your party behind you, That's a really important thing. If you can't do that, you lose. You know who was good at that? Obama. Nobody bucked him. When he said what he wanted, he had Pelosi and other Schumer to enforce it.
Right.
And you could say the same thing. I mean, you could. There
I
was
have
a
no
lot
problems.
of unpleasantness
I
that
have
didn't
no
get
problems with the
reported.
talent to be organizing your people to deliver on the message and
No,
the job that
I'm
has to
talking about
get
the
done.
use of power in a harsh way.
And the use of power that Trump has demonstrated has not been as stately as President Obama, which has turned the American people upside down. Our leaders should be able to bring people together regardless of our positions in life, that we can come together so we respect our leader, not look at our leader as someone with distaste and
Okay,
disdain.
let me
That's
just
the
say,
issue that I have with the
here,
President Trump.
As a Republican, I will say, if you have the American media on your side, as Barack Obama most certainly did, then you don't have to tweet and say kind of nasty attention-getting things. And if you have the American media opposing you at every single term, then you have to talk over the media.
Do you
Ronald
think that
Reagan
comes? Do you
did
think that comes with earning respect of the media, or you think you just get it because you walk in the door?
I think lots of people get it because they have a D next to their name for no other reason.
Wait a minute, Ronald Reagan, he got
Ronald Reagan, there was no Twitter, but
But they love Ronald.
Ronald Reagan was famous for
Right.
speaking over the heads of the media to the people. Now, he did it in a gentlemanly way because it was a different time.
Well, this is we're asking somebody to be a little step more stately with our president.
As a Republican, I'm tired of having Republicans who don't fight back.
We're not saying you got to fight for the American people. Who you fight when you're fighting back? You got to fight for the American people against all the essence that we got to deal with in the world. And the greatest problem that I have is that when you have a president, if a president can't be respected globally, that hurts us here at home. And that's what we need to respect. You can be tough and be respected, but you don't have to be. You can have to be tough and be an idiot at the same time, or
I think
disrespectful
Trump
to people.
is respected around the world in the sense that people now do what America thinks ought to be done. Whether he's loved or liked, I don't think he cares about that, and neither actually do I.
I have a fun question for you, Andy. So right now, given we have 7 Democratic candidates, would you choose a combo of president and vice president with whoever's on the field or not on the field right now? Who do you think would stand a chance against Trump? You know, you can say, like, just choose a pair if you can.
I would have to say the senator from Minnesota,
Okay.
and
Amy.
as well as Bloomberg. I think she can give him
And
what
who's
he
going to
doesn't
be the
have.
vice president? Who's going to be the president?
Oh, that's easy.
Well, it goes back to
Bloomberg.
again, who
Who has
would be
$60 billion?
who would be able to deliver a message. I think she's a great asset to them.
Okay, so
and I think
Bloomberg. Okay,
yeah, I think that probably we have to go.
Well, everyone, thanks so much for tuning in to the 2020 presidential race. We'll be back for some more next time.